Greetings and welcome to this practice WOD called Experience Underscore. Underscore is a totally cool JavaScript library that provides lots and lots of interesting functions that can enable us to, it really simplifies our ability to manage data sets. And the purpose of this experience is to give you a sense for just how easily we can manipulate. You know, this isn't really a large data set. There's like 3,000 records in it, but you know, enough that it's nice to have some support for it. Okay, this is a Hawaii Open data set. Got 5 years of degree data. So we click on this link, you can actually see what it looks like. There's a lot of fields here, and the last column is the actual number of degrees or awards. I guess sometimes you get certificates or something, so they can't call them degrees, but you know, almost all the time there's some sort of degree, and you got different programs and departments and all that kind of stuff. So basically, what this WOD is for you to do is to write a bunch of little functions that manipulate this data in various ways. Okay, and after you're done with this, I think you're going to feel really comfortable using underscore with JavaScript to manipulate data, which is an important thing to do. All right, so to get started, the first thing we have to do is we want to load this data set, and I've done some work for you. I've actually downloaded this data set, converted into JavaScript, and basically created this variable called data, which is an array where an array of objects where each object represents one row in this table. So that's what this thing looks like. And so if we go to JSFiddle and we put those up there, we'll both load the underscore package and we will load this data set. And then, you know, we just want to kind of check to make sure that we've got everything, we can do console.log data.length and run that, and 3744, so we know that data is actually, you know, what we want. And then we can also, you know, check that the underscore package is loaded by just calling an underscore function like this. We run that, we get 1 back. So this has done what we want it to do. Now all the mistakes are going to be us. Okay, here's the critical thing. Your solutions cannot include a for loop, nor can they include an if statement. Okay, and that's the fun part of this actually, is that it's going to force you to kind of use these functions, filtering, mapping, reducing, and so forth. And actually, you'll find when you don't have for loops or if statements, the code becomes quite compact. And after you get, you know, kind of you grow underscore, it's actually quite easy to understand. Okay, so the first function. Oh, we got to start the timer. That's not the right one. Start. Okay. And so the first one we're going to do is called total degrees data. So the way I think it's nice to do this is to basically just make a comment and put what we want to do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of think through the steps in this. And this is actually a pretty easy one, because basically what we want to do is we're going to call the reduce function to map over all of those records, all those objects in that array, and we're going to extract the awards field, which is a number, and we just add that up, and that's going to give us the total number of degrees. So we're going to reduce data set by accumulating the number of awards. Okay, so let's look up the reduce thing. So you call by reduce, you pass it a list, and then you pass it this function, and the function needs to take the memo, which is going to be your accumulator, and an object from this list, and then it's got to return the new sum. Okay, and then you got to pass this reduce function your initial value, which whenever you're adding up numbers is obviously going to be 0. Okay, so let's see what that would look like. So we'll say function total degrees, data, and we're going to return underscore dot reduce, where we pass it data, and then we're going to pass it a function which is going to take a memo and a num, and then that thing is going to return memo plus, and actually this is a record from our record awards, right? Because we're going to get the second argument is actually an item from this list, and this list is a set of records, which is each one of those objects that has all that data in it. So I'm just going to call it record whenever I refer to it. Okay, and then I'm going to say, let's see, that matches that one. Then we've got to match the call to reduce. Then we put a semicolon in. Okay, so we've just written our first function. Now the first problem is, okay, this thing's going to compute some large number, but how do we know if that number is the right number? And we have no idea because there's 3,700 records in this thing. So having written that, the first thing I want to say is, let's create a test data var. Okay, so we're going to say var test data is equal to, and then we'll say data dot slice, starting with a 0, the first object, and going to, okay, and let's have a little test data set where we can actually look at it and figure out whether our functions are doing the right thing before we unleash it on the data set. So let's just look at console.log test data. Okay, so let's run this puppy, and console var test data is undefined. Data dot slice. Okay. It helps if you actually call your functions with the right. Okay, there we go. So it's interesting to think what that previous, slice of JavaScript actually did. But we're going to call the slice function, which takes a parameter list. Okay, so we've got these two elements as we expected. The first element is 69 awards from Manoa. The second element is 322 awards from Kapiolani Community College. Okay, so that's good. So now what we can do is we can call total degrees, and I'm already seeing actually a problem here. Okay, and so I'm going to fix my problem by saying having these anonymous functions are going to make your life really problematic until you get really, really good at it. Because I'm already noticing that I made a mistake when I wrote this function, even before I run it. But you guys might not recognize it. So what I'm going to suggest you do is always don't write any anonymous functions. Always create little helper functions which you then call. So let's call this one, let's make a function called add degrees, and did I get that right? Okay. Okay, so add degrees is a little helper function which will take the memo value and a given record from our data set, and then it's going to return the result of adding together the memo with the awards value from the data set. So if we look up here, awards is that one right there. Okay? So now what we can say now is that total degrees is a result of reducing whatever our past data set is by calling the add degrees function, and then this is what I forgot to do, then giving that initial value of 0. Okay, So now we can test this. Let me get rid of console.log. So now I can type console.log total degrees with test data. I'll run this, and I got 391. Let's see. So 391, does that equal 322 plus 69? Sure. That sounds like 391. Okay. So I'm reasonably confident that this is the right definition for this function. So I'll run it again with the UH data set. Now I get 48,186 degrees. Okay. So there you have our first function. And looks okay. All right, so let's move on. Let's comment out this console.log, and let's move on to what our second one is, which is percentage Hawaiian data returns the percentage of degrees that were awarded to students of Hawaiian legacy. So let me put this in here. Okay, so how would we implement this? Okay. Well, what I would say is the first thing we want to do is we want to actually find the records in the data set that are the ones of students of Hawaiian ancestry. And so if we look to do this, you actually kind of have to look at this. Well, actually, we can see it here. You can see it here if you squint. You can see there's a column called Hawaiian legacy, okay, which is going to be a key value. And then when the awards were to people of Hawaiian ancestry, it's filled in with Hawaiian. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to filter data set to those records where Hawaiian legacy equals Hawaiian. Okay, and then 2, reduce that data set to find total number of degrees. Okay, so that's the total number of degrees given to Hawaiians, but we need the percentage. So then we want to say, divide 2, well, the total number of Hawaiian degrees, divide 2 by total number of degrees to get percentage. Okay, so that's our strategy for this. All right, so the first thing we want to do is filter those data set to records where Hawaiian legacy equals Hawaiian. And so we'll say function Hawaiian legacy, and we have a data set. And then we're going to return, and how do we do this? Well, the function that we want is the filter function. The filter function takes a list, so that's our data set, and it applies a predicate that takes an item from that data set and returns true if we want to retain that item in our list that we're going to return. So we want to say _.filter data, and now we want to put in a predicate that returns true if that record is of a person of Hawaiian legacy. And so I could type an anonymous function here, but as I said before, it's really better to create little helper functions. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say return record, and then let's hope I can type this correctly. In fact, let me just go here and copy that. So Hawaiian legacy. So the Hawaiian legacy field of the record is equal to Hawaiian. Okay, so that's my little predicate function. So now I can say filter by is Hawaiian. And then of course I want to say return. Okay, so let's test that. Console.log. Okay, we'll say Hawaiian legacy with test data. So if I call that, shoots, I get the empty list because, darn it, I don't have any Hawaiians in my test data set. So let's fix that. So we can fix that by saying concatenate that list with underscore dot, and what do we want? We want find. Okay, find the first one that passes a truth test or a predicate. Well, we've got our predicate, so we say find data, comma, is Hawaiian. Okay, see what I just did? I just found the first record in our data set that passes the test for is Hawaiian, and I concatenated that result into my data thing. So now let's comment out that one, but let's print out our test data to see what we have here. So I'm going to do run. Now I've got 3 objects. That's good. I have my first 2 objects, which were the same as before. My third one is 12 awards from Kauai Community College with Hawaiian legacy equals Hawaiian. So this is great. We've got 3 records, 2 non-Hawaiian, 1 Hawaiian. Okay, so let's, having fixed up our test data set, let's now go down here. Okay, and let's rerun this one. Okay, so now we've just returned our 1 object. Okay, in this particular data set, which is the Hawaiian legacy folks. Okay, so that's all good. So now though we filtered the data set to those records where Hawaiian legacy equals Hawaiian. Great. Reduce that data set to find the total number of Hawaiian degrees. So we write a new function called total Hawaiian legacy, I guess, data, and we're going to return the result of calling our reduce function on Hawaiian legacy, right? There's all our Hawaiian legacy data. And then we need to pass our function, which is going to add up all of the awards. We've got that, right? It's this add degrees one. Okay, we're just using it right here. Okay, so we can just type add degrees. Another reason why it's really nice to write all these little helper functions is because, you know, they're helper functions. They could come in useful later. So now we've got total Hawaiian legacy. Let's try looking at that. Okay, which should be the total number of awards now for this. So let's run that. Oh, doggone it. Reduce. Oh, yeah, it's good to put in closing parentheses. Okay, and I think it's time to clear the console. So let's run this. Okay, 12 degrees. Remember, that was exactly the number of degrees from that Kauai Community College thing. So now we've got the total Hawaiian Legacy Awards, okay, and our last step is just to get the percentage. So now we can actually write our function percentage Hawaiian, given some data, and we're going to return the result of total degrees data divided by total Hawaiian legacy data, and then that whole thing is going to be times 100. Okay, and so let's do that. So now let's see what percentage Hawaiian looks like for our test data set. So we'll run, and we get a a bad number because I didn't divide had the wrong numerator and denominator. Okay, let's try run that. Okay, 2.9. Now is that the right number? I don't know. Let's actually get our test data out again. So if we run this, okay, we get our 3 objects. Our first object had 69, Second had 322, so that's about 390. Third 12, so it's about 400 degrees, of which about 10 of them are Hawaiian. So 2.5% or so. You know, that is the right, that's in the right range. Okay, so so a little bit of checking indicates that we seem to be okay. Okay, so there we have our, oh, so what the heck, now that we've seen that, let's just call it with, okay, and what we find is 18% or 19% of all of the awards were to Hawaiian folks. All right, let's try to increase that in future, right? Okay, next one, total degrees by year. Returns the total number of degrees awarded in the past year. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Okay, so the one thing we want to do is we want to start by filter the data set to those records from the past year. And then, once we have a data set containing only those records, we reduce to find the total number of degrees. Okay, so this, you know, this is kind of reasonable. All right, so let's start by writing our little function that's we want to call it something like filter let's call it like, I don't know, yearly data set. Okay, given data and a year, and so we want to or data for year. Let's maybe call it that way, data for year. Okay, and so we're going to call our filter function and pass it data, and then we want to write a predicate. Okay, so this would be function record. Okay, and that will return, well, okay. This is, okay, we'll start off this way, and then we'll do something kind of cool. So what we'll start off by doing is saying, we'll write the function in there, and the function will return true if the record, and then if it's the fiscal year field, the record's fiscal year field equals the year that's passed. Okay, so that's what we want to return from that function, and then I can end off the function this way. Okay, so let's test this by typing console.log data for year, and then test data, and then 2010, which is the year that test data comes from. And if I type run, I didn't have enough parentheses, so I'll type run again. Okay, I get undefined, and that's because I forgot to say return here. So I'll try one more time. Okay, so finally I get the three objects, which is the data for 2010, and if I actually change this just to, since all of them were 2010, we're going to get all three back, but if I change this to 2011 and I run it, we get the empty set. Okay, so this is doing the right thing. The problem is that we're not using a helper function. We've got this anonymous function in there, the indentation's all messy, so how can we clean this up? Okay, well, the interesting thing is that we can't just simply kind of extract this function definition out and give it a name and pass it in, because it's actually referring to the year within the function. Okay, so we're going to do something that I think is one of the really nice features of JavaScript and other, you know, functional type languages, We'll call this make year filter. And it's going to be past a year. Okay. And it's going to say return function data return copy true or false depending upon whether or not that is true or not. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to say make year filter and pass it year. And then we need one more thing. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're writing a function which is going to return a function. Okay, and the function that it's going to return is a function that is passed a record value. Sorry. Okay, it's passed a record value, and it returns true if that record value has the value of the year that was passed when the function was created. That's called a closure, which is a cool concept you'll come across, and sounds really complicated, but really isn't. All right, so let's try running this function this way, and we can see it does. In fact, if I get rid of this thing, so you can actually just see what it actually does. If we pass it with 2011, it returns nothing. If we pass it with 2010, it returns the 3 objects from 2010. Okay, so check this out. Try to understand this, because this is a very nice feature of JavaScript. The more that you get comfortable writing functions that return functions, you'll start being able to make really cool looking code, like that code, okay, which is really, makes a lot of sense. We're going to make a filter function, or a year predicate function, pass it the year, and then pass that into our filter. It's going to do exactly the right thing. Okay, so we've done this filter step. Now we have to reduce to find the total number of pages. So we'll write function total degrees by year data year. Okay, and so we're going to return underscore dot reduce, and then the list that we want to have is data for year given a data and a year. That's the list, and then it's just the same old that we've always been doing, which is we're going to call our add degrees and start with 0, and there's our function. Okay, so if we now change this to total degrees by year for test data in 2010 and run this, we get 403, which is like that 322 plus 69 plus 12. Okay, so that's awesome. And now we might as well find out what the UH data for 2010 was. 8291. 2014, I think, was the last one. 11,278. Okay. So that's that one. Total degrees by year. Now we're going to say list campuses. Returns an array containing all the campuses referenced in the data set. Okay, so for this one we're going to use a new function, which is super cool, which is called the pluck function, and we're going to pluck the campus value into an array. Okay, let's look at pluck. So pluck is right here, and basically what it does is it extracts a list of property values. So if we pluck from the Stooges list the name field, here's the value for the first name field, here's the value for the second one, here's the value for the third one, we get a new array containing only those property values. Okay, so in order to return an array containing all the campuses referenced in the past data set, first thing we probably want to do is just go through and extract all those values for campus. Okay, so we're going to get 3,700 values of campus, many of which are duplicates. And so the next thing we want to do is call, where the heck is it? Is call unique. I think it's in the arrays. Here it is. We'll call the unique function, which returns a duplicate-free version of the array. So let's try to do that. Okay, so number 2 is remove duplicates using unique. Okay, so let's, this one is really kind of simple enough that we should just, I think we can just do it right off the bat. So we'll just say function list campuses data. So we'll do it in 2 parts. First, we're going to call this pluck function. So return underscore pluck, given the data, and then we're going to just check out what the campus is. Okay. So let's try calling console.log with list campuses and our test data and see how that works. So if we run this, okay, there we have our 3 campuses because it turned out in our 3, so this looks correct. It's just that when we run this over UH data, we're going to have a gazillion duplicates. So what we want to do is actually call underscore dot unique on this value. And so if we run that, we get same darn thing, right? Because there weren't any duplicates. But now the good news is we can call this with UH data, and when we run that, we can see here out of all the 3,700 data, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 campuses that are in the system that are awarding degrees for this date, for this time and date. Okay, that was list campuses. That was kind of our easiest one. And then list campus degrees. Return an object where the property keys are campuses and the values are the number of degrees awarded by the campus. Well, this is a little different. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, the first thing we're going to do for this is to group all of the records by campus. Okay, so basically we want keys to be the campus names. We just saw those down here. Okay, and the values are the number of degrees. So we can say group all of the records by campus. So this will create property keys are campuses. That's what we want. Unfortunately, values are an array of records. Okay, but we know what we can do with a value array of records is we can then, once we've done that, we can reduce the array of records to total number of degrees. And then we'll have property keys being campuses, values being the total number of degrees, because we've done a reduction over that array. Okay, so that's our goal here. So the first thing we want to figure out is how to do this group by. Okay, and so if we go to objects, I'm sorry, if we go to, yeah, it should be objects. Maybe it's, here it is. It's under collection, sorry. Okay, so group by. So we're going to take a list of things and we're going to split them into sets grouped by the result of running each value through iterary. Okay, so we're going to, so we have a set here and the property, and we can pass a property called the length property. It's going to return an object where the keys are the value of that property, and the values is an array containing all of those data set elements which satisfy that property. So that's awesome, man. That's exactly what we need to do. So we're going to write a function called group by campus with data. and then we'll actually put a curly brace there, return underscore group by, here's our list of data, and then we're just going to say group by campus, because campus, as you recall, is, okay, the campus that we want. All right, so if we do this, and then we say console.log to kind of understand what we just did, group by campus, test data. Okay, let's just clear this so it's easier to see. And we do run. Okay, we get an object back where the keys are our campuses. Okay, and our values are these arrays. In this case, because we only had three, in our test data, we only had three objects. They all were for separate campuses, so our arrays only have one element, but in general, they have many elements. Okay, and there's our records. Okay, so that's awesome. So now that we've got things grouped by campus, what we need to do is we need to map over this object and do a reduction on the values to change them from an array of dataset objects to just the number. And happily enough, underscore has this function called map object, which transforms the value of each property, which is perfect. So it'll pass the value and the key. Okay, so this value is going to start off being an array. We reduce over that sucker to get the actual total number of degrees in that array of objects, and we just return that, and we're going to get exactly what we need. Okay, so that's what we want to do. So we can say function list campus degrees data. Okay, and we're going to call map object. Okay, where we've grouped by campus data, and then we've got to call that. We've got to pass this function, which takes a value and a key, and then that function is going to return the result of calling the underscore reduce function on the value, okay, which is that array of dataset values, and then our old favorite add degrees, and the starting value 0. And then we do that, and then we close off map object, and then of course, as always, I've forgotten to type return. And so then I can do this, and then I can do that. Okay, so if we say list camp, so let's try list campus degrees, and I'll leave that as an exercise for you to kind of extract that into a helper function. You know, it's easy because there's no closures or anything going on. Okay, so if we now run this, let me clear out the console. Okay, look at that. We've got our campus and then the number of degrees for the campus, which is exactly what we want. So data, we run it, and now we find out that Manoa has granted 23,000, Kapiolani 5,000, Maui 400, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that's great. So that's list campus degrees. And max degrees returns an integer indicating the maximum number of degrees awarded in a year. Okay, so how are we going to do that one? Well, I think one way to do this is we should start off by group all records by year. We just did it by grouping by campus, so we can basically reuse a lot of this stuff. And then once we've grouped them all by year, we can simply say get the max. And I say that because underscore has a function somewhere called max, okay, where you pass it a list and you say what you want it to do, and it returns the maximum, okay. And in fact, if you don't give it a value, if you don't tell it what to do, it'll just make the right. It'll use the value of an object and call max on it. And since we're going to have numbers, actually we should group all records by year. There's this another step here. Reduce to get object with years as key and number degrees as value, and then we just call the max. Okay, so to start off, we can actually, this is really close to what we want. So I'm actually going to do something I don't like doing, but I will in this case, which is to cut and paste. So I think this is called fiscal year, if I'm not mistaken. Fiscal year. Okay, and then we're going to say list campus, list yearly degrees, data, map object group by year, and so that returns an object which should be the year and then the number of degrees. So if we say console.log of list yearly degrees with our test data, and we run this, we get an object. With our test data, we only had data from 2010, and so that's good, and then there were 403 degrees awarded. Okay, so let's try this with UH data and see what happens. Okay, now we get the 5 years with the data, and then what we can do is we can just return the max. So I can embed this call here, and if we run that, we get 11,278, which is the year in which the maximum number of degrees were awarded. That, this is kind of an embedded function. Maybe could be cleaned up a little bit, but is not really as bad. Actually, I think we're supposed to call this max degrees. So I'll just change that to look like that. And then call it one more time just to make sure I didn't mess anything up. Nope, still looks good. Okay. So, cruising right along, last one, doctoral degree programs. Returns a list of the degree programs for which a doctoral degree is granted. So, how does that one work? Okay, so we want to first, obviously we're going to filter it, okay? We've got to filter all those records to the ones where there is a doctoral degree. So filter data set to those records where, well, the question is, what is it? And if we look up here, actually we have to go in here, I think, to see it. So outcome should be doctoral degrees. Okay, so where outcome field equals doctoral degrees. Make sure you spell it right. All right, so there's all the degree programs. And then the next thing we want to do, so now we've got those data set records, then we should pluck the CIP desk value, okay, of those records. And so now we're going to get a whole bunch of degree programs, but there might be duplicates in there. So remove duplicates using unique. Okay, so let's get, so let's start by saying function doctoral list data return underscore dot filter data set, and now we need a predicate which returns true when the past record has an outcome field equal to doctoral degrees. Let's make a little predicate function for that. Function is doctoral degree record return record outcome equal doctoral degrees. Okay, and so now we can filter by is doctoral degree. Okay, and so let's just try this console.log on test data to see that things appear to be okay. All right, and we can see we get 3 objects back. And the first object, outcome other. So return doctoral list data. Oh, geez, let's call the right function. Doctoral list with test data. Run. Okay, the empty one. That's good. And then, so then let's try UH data. Okay, and we get a whole bunch of objects. Okay, I guess that might be good. We don't know quite yet. So now the second thing is we want to say function doctoral degree programs data. Okay, we've got all these objects, and so what we're going to do is we're going to return the result of plucking from the list doctoral list past data. We're going to pluck the CIP desk field. Okay, and then we can return. So now let's see doctoral degree programs for UH data. Okay, now we get all these degree programs, but as you can see, like English General appears more than once. So we want to get rid of all the duplicates. That's just a matter of calling the unique function on things. So if we run one more time, here we go. Okay, here are all the programs that grant doctoral degrees with all duplicates removed. And with that, it looks like we've done everything. So we're going to click Save. And we've now got our stable URL. We'll call that a 45-minute WOD. That's a pretty long one. But I think it's definitely worth doing this WOD, you know, at least a couple times so that you can pretty much run through these functions the way I have and feel comfortable, you know, writing this code and having it work pretty quickly, and you know, having if you do have mistakes, you forget to do a return value or whatever, you know, you can fix it right away. So you know, try to bang through this in less than an hour at a maximum. And if you can do that, then I think that you're going to feel pretty good with underscore and really want to use it whenever you're manipulating, you know, arrays or objects in JavaScript. Because as you can see, man, it's you know, we only touched on a few of the functions here. There's a whole lot of great functions that make your code. And when you look at this code, you notice most of these functions are like 1 line long, maybe 3 lines long. There's no function that's over 5 lines long in this thing. And it if you really are a glutton for punishment, try doing some of these without without underscore, and you'll find you've got nested for loops and nested if then else's, and all these intermediate data structures, and it's very painful. I think this is worth really spending some time on, so that you can really apply underscore to all of your JavaScript programming. Okay, so hope you enjoy that. I'll see you next time.